All right, let's dive right into this explainer. Today, we're unpacking the incredible, frankly, mind-blowing true story of a utopian dream that just absolutely spiraled into chaos. I mean, we're looking at a piece of history here that sounds exactly like a Hollywood thriller, but every single bit of it actually went down in the 1920s and 30s. We're going to explore the rise, the ruin, and the highly bizarre relics of a man known simply as Brother 12. Picture this for a second. An abandoned, heavily fortified compound sitting on a gorgeous 100-acre stretch of De Courcy Island, right off the coast of British Columbia. Now, if you go there today, it just looks like peaceful pastoral meadows and deep forest. But less than a century ago, this exact same land was hiding dark rituals, forced labor, and these wild, persistent rumors of a massive buried treasure. And honestly, that brings us to the fascinating question at the heart of this explainer, one that drops us squarely into the middle of one of Canada's most bizarre historical mysteries. So what actually happens when a spiritual haven built to survive the apocalypse turns into a paranoid, tyrannical fortress? Like, how does this supposedly enlightened community just dissolve into a complete nightmare of missing gold and whispered black magic? Let's find out. Part 1. The Mystic's Vision, from Mariner to Master. To really understand this whole shebang, we have to start with our main character, Edward Arthur Wilson. He was an English mariner born back in 1878, and he'd had this deeply religious upbringing. In fact, he claimed angels used to visit him when he was a kid. But the real turning point? That happened in the autumn of 1924. Wilson was traveling in the south of France and claimed he saw this levitating Egyptian cross, which is known as a Tau. This vision completely changed him. He became convinced he was being guided by the Great White Lodge, this supposed group of spiritual masters steering human destiny. And just like that, Edward Wilson was gone, and Brother 12 was born. Now, he anchored his teachings in something called theosophy. As you can see, theosophy was this incredibly popular occult movement back in the 1920s, which, remember, was a time of huge global uncertainty after the First World War. It basically mashed up Eastern philosophies, mysticism, and this core belief in universal brotherhood. Brother 12 used these progressive ideas to launch a radical critique of mainstream society, publishing texts like The Three Truths to get his message out there. Part 2. Building the Aquarian Foundation. The Ark of Refuge. So in 1927, he moves to the west coast of Canada and officially establishes his compound. The goal? To build an Ark of Refuge to protect his enlightened followers from the total collapse of human civilization. And the sheer scale of his influence is just staggering. The guy was a wildly charismatic speaker, and he actually managed to attract around 8,000 followers from all over the world. And we're not just talking about people on the fringes of society here. His followers included wealthy elites, socially prominent figures, successful writers, even astrologers, all totally hooked on his promise of salvation. Because of that wealthy demographic, the financial power of this cult became enormous. Take Mary Connolly, for example. She was an aging American socialite who was so moved by his teachings, she handed over $520,000. To put that into perspective, that is worth nearly $8 million today. It was this kind of massive financial backing that let the foundation just buy up huge tracts of land, including De Courcy and Valdez Islands, to build their little self-sufficient utopia. Part 3. Paranoia and Black Magic. The Utopia Crumbles. Well, as you might guess, all that immense wealth and power went straight to his head. Rumors started flying about Brother 12 misusing funds, plus he was secretly having multiple affairs with his followers. His leadership became this bizarre mix of extreme contradictions. Over on the one side, you've got his original teachings, egalitarian ideals, gender equity, pure spiritual enlightenment. But on the other, he rapidly devolves into proto-fascist paranoia. He's publishing anti-Semitic rants, literally using cult funds to support a KKK politician down in the States, and stockpiling rifles and explosives to defend his island kingdom. It is a massive, drastic shift. To keep his followers in line during all this, he elevates his new mistress, a married woman named Mabel Scotto. He dubbed her Madame Z, and she basically became the colony's absolutely cruel enforcer. Get this, Madame Z reportedly carried a horsewhip around the compound. She forced the devoted colonists into brutal, back-breaking physical labor. And the worst part? They manipulated the followers into thinking this terrible abuse was actually just a series of necessary spiritual tests to prove they were worthy. Things get even crazier. In 1933, some former employees finally sued him for unpaid wages, leading to an incredibly bizarre court trial. According to the actual reports from the trial, absolute chaos broke out. An otherwise healthy witness just suddenly collapsed. The plaintiff's lawyer inexplicably lost the ability to speak. And the judge? The judge reportedly lost his voice too and could only growl like a dog right there in the courtroom. No joke. This forced them to dismiss the case and set off terrified rumors all across the country that Brother 12 was actively hitting his enemies with black magic. Part 4. The Great Escape. Gold in Jam Jars. Unsurprisingly, the abuse and the sheer madness pushed his core disciples right to the edge. They staged a full-blown rebellion, even writing up a literal Declaration of Independence to oust him. And look at this timeline to see just how fast this whole thing went off the rails. From the initial vision in 24, to setting up shop in 27, to the government actually dissolving the foundation amid scandal by 29. By 1932, the tension just explodes into what historians now call the Great Escape. So what does Brother 12 do when he realizes the jig is up and he's outnumbered? He doesn't go quietly, that's for sure. Under the cover of night, he and Madame Z violently smash up all the colony's farming equipment, intentionally sink their own flagship sailboat, and make a run for it on their private tugboat. And no, they did not leave empty-handed. They took off with an estimated $500,000 of the followers' money. He had converted the fortune into gold coins and, you can't make this up, packed it all tightly into glass pint-preserving jars. Part 5. Unearthing the Legacy. Documentary Archaeology. Okay, so instead of just treating this like some sensational campfire story, modern researchers are doing some heavy lifting to find the actual truth. They're using this super fascinating method called documentary archaeology. Since Brother 12 totally trashed the colony on his way out, researchers have to connect the surviving historical paperwork directly with physical artifacts and dirt-in-the-ground excavations to decode the cult's real footprint on those islands. So how does that actually work? Well, they study what they call symbolic objects. For instance, they'll analyze heavily annotated copies of the cult's books, like foundation letters and teachings, to see exactly how followers were scribbling in the margins and interacting with the brainwashing. They pore over the Chalice, which was the cult's own magazine, to read how they described their buildings. And then, brilliantly, they take the 1931 Canadian census, which lists the exact building materials of the members' houses, and cross-reference it directly with the ruined cabin foundations they're digging up today. But digging in the dirt also uncovers the genuinely dark, tangible realities of the cult that the official paperwork conveniently left out. The starkest example of this? A chilling discovery made on the property back in 1956. Up in the attic of the commune's so-called House of Mystery, which was the exact room where Brother 12 claimed to talk to his spiritual masters, searchers found a human skull. It belonged to a young woman, and it had been morbidly carved into a bowl. As for Brother 12 himself, well, the official paperwork claims Edward Arthur Wilson died in Switzerland on November 7, 1934. But honestly, given his massive track record of lying and deception, a lot of historians and former followers think he faked the whole thing so he could just kick back and enjoy his stolen jar gold. There are even folks who swore they saw him meeting with his lawyer in San Francisco years after he supposedly died. So his ultimate fate? It's a total mystery to this day. Which leaves us with this final, lingering thought to chew on about the really dark, captivating legacy of Brother 12. When you look at those beautiful, overgrown meadows of DeCourcy Island today, you have to wonder, do those ruins still guard that legendary lost gold packed into glass jam jars? Or do they just hold the tragic, empty remnants of a broken utopia? It's a pretty stark reminder of how easily the search for pure spiritual enlightenment can be twisted into absolute darkness. Thanks for tuning in to this explainer, and we'll catch you next time.